Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video, we're gonna have a little bit of a existential talk discussion. So, I don't know, maybe it's just a random day for me, but I've been thinking a lot more about Marvel Strike Force and Apocalypse and all of the stuff that we're that's coming at us and that we're getting ready for, and how fun this is or not for myself, for you guys, and like how you feel about this. Because for me, it's more about how now I feel like my roster is planned for me for the next 9 months, and there's not really much variation to the extent that it's exciting, because I kind of already have everything planned out, and now I don't know if that actually is a lot of fun for me. So we're going to talk about my thoughts more broadly, because I'm wondering if any of you feel this way at all. So if you're ready to go, then let's boil this down. And obviously a lot of it stems from this, right? Apocalypse. Oh, that's too far. I always zoom in too far with this picture. And this is where the year started, right? We had Darkhold and Morgan Le Fay, and this was around like March, April time, when Morgan Le Fay came out. And this is going to go all the way until probably about February or March of next year, right, when Apocalypse comes out, only because of the timelines for Death, and then it has to be like, 3 months later for Death's second pass before the Apocalypse Saga comes out. And so, that way I think that, Death is likely around November, late November, early December, 3 months on. Brings us to March, which kind of brings us pretty much full circle here in a year for one character. And now it's not just one character, of course. It's 20 20 characters plus maybe some additional requirements, which I talked about in a previous video as well. But it's just like, that's it, right? And that's the most of the game. And I want to bring up my character spreadsheet, at least for now. Oh, that's the variable sheet. This one here, the character tracker, because I want to kind of talk about, like, since we learned about Apocalypse and since we've kind of like started working towards him, what kind of characters have been coming out. And for the most part, it's like 90% Horseman related, more or less. Not always, but like, let's start for patch 6.0, right? And this was the Darkhold Pestilence patch. And so we got we had Darkhold, right? And then we had Madeline Pryor, who was like the one standalone character who was added for the Marauders. And then we have A-Force, who, in my opinion, this is a huge regret from me for building, because it's not that I thought that I would need them, but I thought they would be a little bit better. I mostly put investment into Jessica Jones and Spider-Woman, not so much the other characters. And then we had Unlimited X-Men, Horseman Group number 2. And then we had Heroes Guardians now with Mighty Thor and Valkyrie, who I also somewhat regret putting resources in as well. I know that, they're a team for the War Scourge coming up, but I think I may have gone a little bit too far. I think I G15'd a lot of them, and Thor was okay, because like Thor hits really hard and he smacks. But as far as, like, I'm actually not that impressed with Mighty Thor and Valkyrie. And so that brings us to 6.3, which is where we're at now. And then, of course, we have Bionic Avengers, who are, again, another Scourge team, Team 5, but at least they're a raid team. So that makes me feel better than Hero as Guardians, because I know that I'm going to be using Bionic Avengers, for Doom Raid 3. Because I'm not using Mighty Thor and Valkyrie and the other Heroes Guardians in that grouping, because I'm just going to be, for the most part, probably just using them in the Scourge event, and then slapping them on War Defense and whatever, right? And then we have the War Team, Abomination and Brawn, Amadeus Cho, and then Red Hulk coming in pretty soon. And then 6.4, I don't know, could be another raid team, and then we go back to doing, the Death team, right? And so, for the most part, if it's not a raid team, everything is preordained. And that's what I guess kind of bothers me a little bit, when I think about my roster building beforehand. So let's talk about like pre-Apocalypse. What were we largely building towards? And that was, mostly Dark Dimension, right? That's what it had always been for the last 3-4 years of the game. And we had something to work towards, but we weren't really told who we had to build necessarily. For Dark Dimension 2, we're just going to skip Dark Dimension 1. Dark Dimension 2 was Gear Tier 13, but any characters There was no selection like Dark Dimension 3, which is where we started with Global, Cosmic, City, and that was it. And then Dark Dimension 4, which required Gear Tier 15, required... 5 went the other way. So it was still Global, City, Global, Cosmic, City, Legendary is when they added in Legendary. And a lot of reasons for that was because of how OP Phoenix was, and, you know, being able to drain 20% hit points basically every match, more or less, or every revive, the function for that. And I think that's why they did that for the Legendary lane. And characters like Ebony Maw as well was quite powerful. And then we had Dark Dimension 5, which kind of just is the same thing. It just switched up the order. So, you know, now it's City, Global, Cosmic, Legendary, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if off the top of my head. And you know, the point is that we had some choice of characters that we could build. You know, and so maybe it's an illusion of choice, you know, to some degree, right? You know, there's always going to be those best characters for Dark Dimension, and, you know, but there was flexibility. You weren't told specifically what you had to build. And so now, you know, bring us to 2022, late 2022, and all we're thinking about now is the Apocalypse Saga, right? And so we have all 4 of them here now. The Pestilence Saga is here now. Famine likely in like another month and a half to 2 months in her second pass, whenever that ends up being. And then that's all we're working on. We're working on Darkhold characters. We're working on Unlimited X-Men characters to, you know, Gear Tier 15, 16. We need 15 for difficulty 2 of the sagas. It's 17 actually for this, I believe. But you don't need this for Apocalypse. And then Gear Tier 16 for all of these teams for Baby Apocalypse, which is going to be difficulty 2, and that's like the 4-star unlock or whatever it is. And then with War, it's going to be the Gamma team. It actually hasn't even included that yet, even though it does say use that. I guess they because Red Hulk's not out yet, so I guess this will be updated later, where it actually says that it is the Gamma team indeed here. And then for Death, we don't know yet, but it doesn't really matter because that is the build order, and that is what you need to do, right? If you want Apocalypse. And so that means Gear Tier 16 or 17 for all of these 20 characters, plus a little bit more. And so then the illusion of choice that we previously had from Dark Dimension doesn't become an illusion of choice anymore. It's a preordained master plan that you want to use as many characters for these sections as you possibly can to double dip for Dark Dimension 5 and for the Apocalypse Saga, right? That just makes sense. Because if you need Gear Tier 16 for Baby Apocalypse, then you might as well just build as many of them as you can. Darkhold for Global, Evil Strange for Cosmic, Unlimited X-Men for Global. Like, a lot of them are Global, actually. She-Hulk, if you want, for City, although she kind of sucks standalone. And then whatever the Death team is. Possibly they could be Global as well, and so maybe you still have to broaden your choices a little bit. But you get my point. And so if you have to take them to Gear Tier 17... which is then the big Apocalypse, right? The big boy Apocalypse, which is like 7 yellow, 4 or 5 red, or whatever it ends up being. Rest of it probably going into dark promotion credits. I don't really have much choice to build. I've talked a little bit about my own roster building and what I've been up to, and it's like a plan. It's like I have a preset plan that I know what I'm going to be doing over the next 6, 7, 8 months, right? Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take. But, you know, that's basically it. And so right now, focusing on Bionic Avengers. And then after, because they're for raids. And honestly, I put raids at a pretty high pedestal because it's content that I'm doing every single day. And then after that, I just have to go back to Unlimited X-Men. My Dazzler's at 83 right now. Phantom X and Sunfire are at 80, so I need to take them to 85 because that's the level I need for Gear Tier 16, just so I have the levels pre-done. And then I can go over to Gamma. And then I can go over to the Death Team eventually. And that's it, right? You know, like, and there's no variation. I don't have time or resources because I'm not a Kraken to put into these other teams. So if any other characters come out, and that's why I really want to go back to this spreadsheet. I somehow made made time to build some of these other characters. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Mighty Thor and Valkyrie, yes, they were Scourge characters. Madeline Pryor had 0 resources. She's actually probably right at the bottom of my roster. She's pretty close, you know, as far as I possibly could. I do level them to like a reasonable level to just shove them into a Blitz team. Level 50. That's it. 4 yellow, 4 red. And then even Magic. I didn't really have that much time for it either if we go back into like December, right? Level 65, 5 yellow now. But like some of these other characters, I just barely had the resources to do. T'Challa was a desperation move for Dark Dimension 5 Cosmic, because I really didn't want to take anyone else. But largely, I just don't have time. Nobody has time for any of these other characters. So I guess that's what I'm most concerned about, is they might bring out some really cool characters that I would like to invest in, but I can't, because I don't have the resources for it. And so it's disappointing. You know, there's lots of other characters that I would love to build. I would have, you know, for fun, to build some of these other characters or teams, like the Ravager rework, and who knows, like maybe there's going to be a West Coast Avengers team with Hawkeye. That's what's been rumored, because now the Wave 1s are starting to get their own teams. You know, like Iron Man got Bionic Avengers, Gamma for Hulk, and Hero as Guardians for Thor, and then Hawkeye might be the next one up to get his own team somewhere. And I just don't have if it's not a raid team, and if it's not a Horseman team, I can't do it. And so that makes me wonder, like, do they want this? Is this how they wanted Marvel Strike Force to be? I can't answer that question. I pose that to you all. Is this the kind of Marvel Strike Force that you enjoy playing? Because I kind of preferred it back in the day, like even this time last year, when at least there was choice to the extent that if I wanted to do side fun projects, I could. And now I can't. Because I know that if I do, that I'm going to fall behind. More so than I did like last year. Because with so many characters that are required now for Apocalypse, unless I were just to say, fuck Apocalypse, and not do it, which is probably is not a thing I would do if you care about the meta. But I don't believe that you should be able to do more than one. In the past, I was able to keep up with the meta and also still have fun side projects, but there really is no fun side projects anymore. Like I said, Madeline Pryor, you know, the most recent character that wasn't associated with this stuff, is probably the last kind of release that we've had so far that I would deem as a side project. Wakandans, maybe, when they had their rework for Cosmic Crucible, but aside from that, you know, I have like hundreds of characters that I say hundreds, there's only like 200 in the game, that I would never touch again, or never touch at all. This is a regret. I wish I could get those resources back. But I don't know. The game is in a bit of a weird spot. You know, I have to say, for lack of better words, I don't know if I like it as much. As far as the roster building goes and the theory crafting goes, almost all of that is out the window. So the only thing that matters is getting the gear tier on the required characters. I've finished Darkhold. You know, if you haven't, that's the first thing that you guys should work on, right? You know, because it's going to go in order. Darkhold, Unlimited X-Men, Gamma, and Death. Whether it's mutant or skill, it doesn't really matter. And so then it makes me wonder, you know, is there going to be, not a Dark Dimension 6, but a new mode that's like Dark Dimension, but requires gear tier 17 characters? Will there be anything like that again? Because that's important. Since most of the people who were gearing almost exclusively these 20 characters. And so if another game mode comes out that requires a higher gear tier, what are we going to do? Are we going to try and squeeze as much value out of these Horseman characters as possible before we move on to the next big thing? Or are we going to have to start from scratch from the perspective of like, okay, you know, some of my gear tier 15, 60 characters that I left in the dust because they weren't related to Apocalypse, now I have to build them back up again. Because I can't use these, for whatever reason, I can't use these in the next big thing. And I guess I don't like the preordained nature of this. I don't like that we are foretold in a variety of ways what we have to build, and that's it. And that's what bothers me the most. I think that it's just like I can no longer do other things. You know, the Squirrel Girl that I have at like gear tier 16, is there going to be a reason for me to ever have her at gear tier 17? You know, for anything. Quantum Realm 1, right, which requires gear tier 17. Like, is there going to be a reason for me to gear up any of these other characters, or is the sole focus even into the future, going to be Apocalypse related, because while they make him come out with a new thing or a new epic campaign, you're still going to be thinking about the characters related to Apocalypse if you don't have him. So therefore, you're going to want to maximize your value by building as many of those characters as possible. And are you going to keep building them through the roof? You know, I took Punisher to gear tier 15. I'm pretty sure I took him to gear tier 15. I used him in Dark Dimension 4 City. And that's because he was cheap. And because I already had him at gear tier 14, so I was like, why not, right? At some point I stopped doing that. I didn't do that with Sabretooth like I did in Dark Dimension 4 as well. But that's what I mean. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about all this? Do you feel the game is more fun now as far as roster building? Not talking about the various game modes and whatnot, other than Epic Campaign related. Do you think that it is in the right spot? Do you think that they're going towards the right way as far as like theory crafting, roster building, or lack thereof? I personally feel there's a huge lack thereof, and that just kind of disappoints me a little bit. I'm not going to say I hate the game. I don't hate otherwise I wouldn't make these videos. But I'm kind of on the down as far as my excitement and how I feel about the game more broadly in terms of, you know, what I look forward to. Because new characters are great, but if they're not related to Apocalypse, can't be excited because I'm probably not going to be able to build them. That's how I feel, and that's the end of this video. So until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.